Hey everyone, welcome back to Steve's View. All right, let's talk about something that could quietly become one of the most important political stories of the next year: the 2026 U.S. midterm elections and the unusually aggressive strategy Donald Trump is preparing to use to fight them. Because what's happening right now isn't just a normal midterm setup. Trump and the White House are treating this election less like a local congressional cycle and more like a national referendum on his presidency. In other words, instead of letting House and Senate candidates run on local issues like roads, schools, or district-level concerns, Trump wants to nationalize the election, to turn it into something that feels closer to a presidential race. And historically, that's a risky move, but it's also a bold one. Let's start with the stakes. In November 2026, the United States will hold midterm elections. About 1/3 of the Senate will be up for re-election, and every single seat in the House of Representatives will be on the ballot. That matters because if Democrats manage to take control of either chamber, or both, Trump's legislative agenda could slow to a crawl. Budgets could get blocked. Oversight investigations could intensify. Judicial confirmations could stall. And in the worst-case scenario for him, impeachment efforts could resurface. So for Trump, this election isn't just about party pride. It's about whether he keeps the political runway he needs to govern effectively for the remainder of his term. And the White House seems to be thinking about this election in unusually strategic terms. Traditionally, midterms are local. Candidates emphasize district-specific wins. They talk about bringing money home, building infrastructure, solving community problems. Voters often treat midterms as a chance to check the president's power or express frustration. But Trump is trying to flip that script. Instead of letting midterms become a fragmented collection of local races, he wants to frame them as a national battle over major issues: immigration, taxes, government spending, inflation, energy, and the broader direction of the country. The idea is simple. If these issues feel national, emotional, and existential, then voters might treat this election like a presidential one, not a local one, and that's why Trump is planning to campaign personally, aggressively, and repeatedly. According to reporting, he intends to travel frequently to battleground states, appear at rallies in competitive districts, and treat down ballot Republican candidates as extensions of his own political brand. His senior team has been clear about this. They don't want Trump to feel like a distant figure. They want him to feel like he's on the ballot himself. That means major spending, heavy travel, coordinated messaging, and consistent emphasis on what the administration sees as its economic and policy achievements. Vice President J.D. Vance is expected to play a prominent role as well, not just as a surrogate, but as a visible heir to Trump's political movement. Cabinet members will also be deployed across the country to promote the administration's record. This is essentially a full-spectrum national campaign, but aimed at congressional seats instead of the presidency. And in terms of campaign infrastructure, Republicans believe they have some structural advantages. Trump's political action committees reportedly control hundreds of millions of dollars. That money is expected to be funneled heavily into competitive Senate races in states like Michigan, North Carolina, and Georgia, as well as dozens of House races in swing districts, especially in places like California and New York. Republican strategists are also pointing to voter registration data. Since 2024, they claim Republicans have gained ground in registered voters in many states, something they see as a positive sign for turnout. But the real strategic obsession inside Trump's camp isn't just persuasion, it's mobilization. One of the biggest challenges in midterm elections is turnout. Presidential elections bring out casual voters. Midterms don't. And Trump's team believes that his greatest strength is his ability to energize a core base. People who might otherwise stay home, but will show up if they feel like they're voting for him, not just for some generic congressional candidate. In other words, the goal is to convert presidential-style voters into midterm voters. To do that, Trump plans to lean heavily on emotional framing. He's expected to remind supporters that his broader political vision, what he calls a golden age for America, is unfinished. He'll likely warn that Democrats could reverse his agenda, block his reforms, or even reopen impeachment efforts. He'll frame the election as a choice between momentum and reversal, strength and weakness, control and chaos. That emotional framing is not accidental. It's central to his strategy. At the same time, the White House is trying to sharpen its message around economic achievements. Trump's team wants to emphasize progress on issues like mortgage rates, credit card interest rates, housing affordability, gas prices, and cost of living pressures. Whether or not voters feel those improvements is a separate question, but the administration believes it hasn't done a good enough job selling its own record. Trump himself has reportedly expressed frustration that what he sees as meaningful economic gains aren't being widely recognized. So part of this midterm push is not just electoral, it's narrative. It's about rewriting how the public remembers his first year of the term. Now, it's important to acknowledge a reality that history doesn't favor incumbents in midterms. For decades, the party controlling the White House has tended to lose seats in Congress during midterm elections. It's a recurring pattern, driven by voter fatigue, protest voting, and the natural ebb and flow of political enthusiasm. Polling aggregates currently show Democrats with a modest edge in overall congressional preference. Democrats, for their part, are planning their own national messaging strategy. They intend to focus on cost of living, healthcare, corruption, and institutional accountability, including alleged issues involving Congress, the courts, and the executive branch. Some Democratic voices have mocked Trump's decision to campaign as aggressively as he plans to, arguing that voters won't let congressional Republicans dodge responsibility for inflation, grocery prices, or economic frustration just because Trump shows up to rally. So this is shaping up to be a clash between two very different narratives. Republicans want this election to feel like a referendum on Trump's leadership and momentum. Democrats want it to feel like a referendum on economic stress, ethics, and institutional trust. And that's where this story becomes more interesting than a simple campaign update. Because this election isn't just about tactics, it's about how American politics itself is evolving. Trump's strategy reflects a broader shift in modern elections, the collapse of the boundary between local and national politics. Congressional races used to be about districts. Now they're increasingly about identities, parties, cultural alignment, and national mood. Candidates are less like local representatives and more like avatars in a national ideological conflict. Trump is leaning into that reality instead of fighting it, and you can argue both sides of that. On the positive side, nationalizing elections can create clearer accountability. Voters know what they're voting for. The stakes feel real. Political messaging becomes more coherent. On the negative side, it can further polarize the country, drown out local issues, and reduce complex policy debates into emotional loyalty tests. So Trump's approach is not just a campaign strategy, it's a bet on the future shape of American democracy. It's also worth stepping back from pure party narratives and asking a deeper question. Is this strategy likely to work? The honest answer is, it could go either way. Trump's strengths are real. He has a loyal base. He commands attention. He knows how to dominate media cycles. He can energize voters who might otherwise disengage. But his weaknesses are real too. He also energizes opposition. He can alienate moderates. He carries political baggage. And his presence can turn low-stakes local races into high-stakes national culture battles, which sometimes benefits Democrats in suburban districts. So this midterm may become less about policy and more about Trump's personal political gravity, and that leads to the bigger picture. This election will likely function as a midterm referendum on Trump's governing style, not just his policies. Voters won't just be reacting to tax rates or immigration rules. They'll be reacting to tone, temperament, cultural identity, and whether they want more of this political era or less of it. At the same time, Trump's motivation isn't purely electoral. There's a legacy dimension here. He appears deeply invested in shaping how history remembers his presidency. Holding Congress makes it easier to pass laws, confirm judges, defend executive power, and cement long-term influence. In that sense, this election is part of a broader project locking in political legacy, not just winning seats. And whether you support Trump or oppose him, that's something worth paying attention to, because what we're really watching is an experiment in modern political power. Can a president effectively transform midterm elections into a national, personality-driven referendum? Can emotional mobilization overcome historical midterm patterns? Can centralized leadership outperform traditional, decentralized congressional campaigning? And what does it mean for democracy if every election, even local ones, becomes a battle over a single national figure? This isn't just a story about Republicans versus Democrats. It's a story about how politics is becoming more centralized, more nationalized, more emotional, and more personal. And the 2026 midterms may end up being a test case for where American elections are heading next. Whether Trump's strategy succeeds or fails, it will likely shape how future campaigns are run. So this isn't just political drama, it's a live experiment in power, narrative, and the future of American electoral strategy. And it's one we'll probably be talking about for a long time.